Excellencies, distinguished ladies, delegates, ladies and gentlemen, good morning. I'm going to speak on the Nigerian context on the role of state in trying to prevent or respond to acts of terrorism. The northeastern part of Nigeria, where I come from, of course, is the most disadvantaged region in the country, with the lowest cost in all human development indices, people, particularly women and children. The rise of violent extremist ideology in northeastern Nigeria, particularly in Maiduguri, the epicenter of we call it JAS, popularly called Boko Haram. In fact, Boko Haram their original name is Jamaatul Ali Sunnah Lid-Da'awati wal Jihad, which in fact, they never wanted to be called that name Boko Haram because they said it's mischievous. Hence, we acronym them JAS as peace builders. In fact, it started long before 2014 when it became popular with the abduction of the Chibok girls. It started as far back as 1999 when a group of youth called the Da'awa Group, recruiting young men aged between 16 and 19, all of them intelligent boys, sons of influential people, most of them undergraduates. The group embarked on missionary activities in propagating Islam, preaching against injustices and corruptions in the society, which they claimed were being perpetrated by products of Western education. They moved with their wives and families from communities to villages, persuading the youth and indoctrinating the youth into their ideology. Where am I? Well, sorry, bear with me. I don't have yes. So by 2002, they became known as the Nigerian Talibans. They openly preached against everything Western, including even immunization of children against the child killer diseases, which attracted large support group among youths, both male and female, who rejected their parents and found refuge in the group's sanctuary at the outskirts of Maiduguri, where there is a large mosque, hostels in the form of shanty settlements, and where they contract cheap marriages between lovers, and then give them token startup grants to start means of livelihood to their members. They withdrew their kids from schools and stopped their wives and kids from going to even access medical attention. The Maiduguri society then began to resist them when they started losing their sons and daughters to the movement. All of this happened under the watch of the state. Only some progressive scholars within Maiduguri and other parts of the country engaged them openly in open debates and in the media. At that stage, the problem was purely lack of awareness, ignorance, poverty and unemployment, intellectual and religious vacuum in the educational systems, the widely spreading drug consumption in the society, the bad judgment or wrong misinterpretation of Islam by some people, and the exclusion or absence of dialogue and regulatory mechanism for Islamic preaching. As these ideologies become increasingly dominant over time, the state then could have adopted the following measures, like educational and awareness-raising programs among these issues, family cohesion and support for teenagers, providing decent living conditions for the youth, equitable distribution of resources through good governance, adopting anti-smuggling policy and promoting tolerance, culture of dialogue and moderation in Islam, etc. Instead of the government assuming this responsibility, the extremist ideology were used for political gains during the 2007 elections. The group enjoyed government's patronage in exchange for political support, and they were rewarded with adoption of a political Sharia in court, and the creation of a Ministry of Religious Affairs, to which one of them was appointed the commissioner in charge of the new ministry. When they perceived that government was not implementing the Sharia as they wished to see it, they became defiant, resisted any state law to apply to them. In fact, this was the zenith of the state failure in Borno, when the state could not apply sanction on certain group of the society, with resultant consequences of violence that spread all over northern Nigeria and split into neighboring countries, thus assuming a regional dimension. Yeah. Sorry, bear with me. Yes. So I was talking about the state failure, when a state, in fact, cannot sanction a certain group of members of the society. When the central government, that is the federal government of Nigeria, finally responded to the insurgency, it created a joint task force, they call it JTF, of the Army, Navy, Air Force, Immigration, Customs, Police, and Civil Defense Corps to fight the insurgency. An intervention that, rather than help the situation, worked to the insurgents' advantage, as they gained more sympathizers and recruits who joined to avenge the abuses meted on their family members and communities by the military, who mismanaged the situation as they could not identify who a Boko Haram or JAS was. Hence embarked on mass human rights violation. In fact, the declaration of the state of emergency by the federal government on the 3 northeastern states in 2013 further led to the loss of all our human rights, including our rights to life and shelter, without anywhere to report to when violated. The military arrested thousands of innocent youth and detained them in the notorious Giwa barracks in Maiduguri and the Guantanamo den in Damaturu, where they were tortured, suffocated, starved to death, and to date, a large percentage of them remain missing forever. These and other forms of human rights violations by the state brewed a feeling of hatred towards the military, that whenever the military was attacked, residents would celebrate with chanting Allahu Akbar, and nobody wanted to be associated with the military, nor there were efforts on the side of the military to engage with the civilians. In fact, when the very system or mechanism that is supposed to protect the country fails, and that people are even happy when they are attacked, then you can perceive the danger that lies ahead. A report by the Amnesty International released in June last year called for senior members of the Nigerian military to be investigated for war crimes and possible crimes against humanity committed in the course of the fight against Boko Haram. It reported that over 8,000 people that had been murdered, stabbed, suffocated, and tortured to death by the military with impunity. As a result of the inability and I can say rather sometimes unwillingness of the state to continue in their operations. In fact, coming to the rapporteur's report, paragraph 25, article 6 of the special rapporteur's report said, counterterrorism measures must not only be in compliance with international human rights and human rights law, but must respect the rights of life of even the suspects themselves, in our case, the Boko Haram, absolute prohibition on the use of torture and other ill treatment or punishment during interrogation or detention, adding that when counterterrorism measures abuse human rights, they are not only unlawful, but they add a propaganda victory to the terrorists. So in the northeastern part of Nigeria, We have a long way to go with practical evidence in the form of our own experiences that rights abuses by counterterrorism agencies has indeed helped recruitment to JAS, as to date, everyone suspected to be associated with JAS can be killed without any form of due process, and then the non-violent or the repentant members of the JAS are still trailed, arrested, and their whereabouts remain unknown even to their family members. Even in 9-year-olds who escaped JAS, who are forcibly abducted but managed to escape, were interrogated and tortured. There is no accountability for those perpetrators. So even international accountability mechanisms are silent. So therefore, can we humbly ask the Secretary General annual report on children and armed conflict to talk about this pattern of killing and maiming of children, please? Looking at now integration and rehabilitation of victims of Boko Haram, the 2015 general election in my country has brought hope for very survival of Nigeria and an end to the insurgency. But such hope is diminishing with the new government's focus exclusively on military response. Take it from me that the de-radicalization program that is the flagship program the Nigerian government is putting at the forefront to show its non-military commitment to countering violent extremism is slowly losing ground to a desperation on the part of the military that may not lead us to any result while managing the humanitarian and social crisis generated by the insurgency, the challenges associated with reintegration and rehabilitation of victims like the thousands of unaccompanied children, the teeming IDPs, the residents of the host community, and children born out of sexual violence, education of the IDP kids and that of the host communities with limited facilities, food scarcities as a result of 3 years without farming, undertaking agricultural activities, compounded by a selfish political culture of winner takes all, that the state affairs are managed by the same set of political cronies without results, and politicization of the crisis that relevant stakeholders like the state governor, the senators, the military, giving conflicting stories on the same situation, thrives. My recommendation finally is that the international community, in fact, I was very happy when I heard His Excellency, the Iranian ambassador, in fact, admitting to their shortcomings and then calling on the international community to close the gap, assist them close the gaps. But in our own situation, in fact, our governments, security agencies, and actors, in fact, take to denials, hence, in fact, aggravating our problems. So our recommendation honestly lies generally with the international community. We'll call on the I would like to call on the international community to support developing nations like ours, fight the institutionalized corruption that thrives, that the massive stealing from the defense budget is so much that ordinary soldiers are often allowed to go without weapons or proper training. International community should also encourage nations like ours to take it off their minds that the apparent belief that a purely militaristic approach is going to work against groups like Boko Haram, when clearly it will not. That unless there is an effort to understand the anger that fuels the JAS recruitment, including the abuses suffered by civilians in the name of counterterrorism, and the belief that JAS are still living with the people in villages, there will be no change and no progress could be seen in the nearest future. The international community should also ensure that development assistance to Nigeria helps increase educational opportunities for girls, and all forms of insurgency, combats gender and other forms of discrimination, keeps schools safe, builds the capacity of women leaders in girls' education, improves health care for the millions of traumatized women and girls, and support and empower local women's civil society organizations and activists. A focus on the victims of violence, independently seeking out and listening to their voices about their needs and what needs to be done, which this day is devoted to, is an essential part of this effort, should be an essential part of this effort. Women leadership and participation must be emphasized at all international, regional, and domestic efforts to counter and prevent terrorism and violent extremism. These strategies must prioritize support for local women-led initiatives and institutionalize ongoing consultation with them. All efforts to counter extremism should adopt a community-based consultative approach in which different ethnic, faith-based, and minority groups are consulted and included in the development, implementation, and monitoring of the strategies. Mobilization and sensitization for increased voices and confidence to speak out, networking, civil activism and involvement in humanitarian activities by women, human rights defenders, and activists should be encouraged so that we get proper legislation on the issues bordering us. And then finally, our government should be, in fact, pressured to put in place effective safeguards for children encountered during military operations, including clear guidance on identification, treatment, and transfer of children to child protection actors. I am here delighted to note, in fact, the efforts UNICEF has been making negotiating the adoption of a draft protocol on the handover of children detained for their association with insurgents, although government is still not fully committed to signing and implementing it. So you can see, distinguished audience, the problem in my country is enormous, a problem in a society that is without voices. So therefore, our only hope, in fact, our only hope, I continue to repeat, is the intervention of international community to help both impress on our governments and then build the capacity of local actors so that we could be able to stand for ourselves and speak for ourselves. Thank you for listening.
Thank you very much.
Good morning. It's an honor to be here today and talk about a topic that's near and dear to my heart. I'd like to share, I'll have you put the first slide up. I'd like to share my perspectives as a mother who lost her son on 9/11 and a passionate victims advocate, but also through the lenses of a professional